The morning sun cast long shadows across the busy streets of London as James Mitchell walked down the sidewalk with purpose in his step. He had been planning this day for months, saving every penny from his salary as a Royal Protection Officer. Today was the day he would finally buy the car he needed for his work. James wore simple blue jeans and a plain white t-shirt, looking like any ordinary person going about their daily business. His casual clothes were a stark contrast to the formal uniform he wore while protecting members of the royal family. James stopped in front of Sterling Motors, one of the most expensive car dealerships in all of London. The building gleamed with glass walls and shiny metal fixtures that reflected the sunlight like mirrors. Through the enormous windows, he could see rows of the most beautiful and expensive cars in the world. Ferraris in bright red paint sat next to silver Lamborghinis that looked like they belonged in a movie. Bentleys with leather seats that cost more than most people made in a year were positioned perfectly under bright spotlights. He took a deep breath and pushed open the heavy glass door. The moment he stepped inside, James felt like he had entered a different world. The floor was made of polished marble that was so clean he could see his reflection in it. Soft classical music played from hidden speakers in the ceiling. The air smelled like expensive leather and new car freshness mixed together. Everything around him screamed luxury and wealth. James had worked for the Royal Protection Unit for 15 long years. He had stood guard outside palace doors during important meetings. He had traveled with princes and princesses to foreign countries. He had protected some of the most important people in Britain during dangerous situations. But none of that showed on his face or in his simple clothes as he looked around the fancy showroom. The cars around him were like works of art. A bright yellow sports car sat in the center of the room with a price tag that made James whistle quietly under his breath. The number had so many zeros that most people would need to count twice to believe it was real. Next to it sat a black SUV that looked like it could drive through a war zone and still look perfect afterwards. James was not here to buy the most expensive car in the showroom. He needed something reliable and fast, but not too flashy. His job required him to blend in with normal traffic, while still being able to keep up with royal motorcades when necessary. He had done his research for weeks, reading reviews and comparing prices. He knew exactly what he wanted and had the money saved up to pay for it. As he walked deeper into the showroom, James noticed other customers being helped by well-dressed salespeople. A man in an expensive suit was sitting in a red convertible while the salesperson explained all the special features. A woman wearing jewelry that probably cost more than James made in 6 months was looking at a white luxury sedan, while 2 employees answered her questions with big smiles on their faces. James approached the reception desk where a young woman with perfectly styled hair and a designer dress was typing on a computer. Her name tag read Sarah, and she had the kind of confident look that came from working in a place where everything cost a fortune. James cleared his throat politely and waited for her to look up. When Sarah finally raised her eyes from her computer screen, James saw something change in her expression. Her friendly smile faded slightly as she looked at his casual clothes and simple appearance. Her eyes moved from his plain t-shirt to his worn sneakers and back up to his face. James could almost see the thoughts forming in her mind as she made quick judgments about who he was and what he could afford. James had no idea that this moment would change everything. He had no way of knowing that his simple request to look at cars would lead to one of the most embarrassing experiences of his life. All he wanted was to buy a good car so he could continue doing his job of protecting the people of Britain. But sometimes life has other plans, and sometimes those plans teach lessons that nobody expects to learn. Sarah looked at James for what felt like forever before she finally spoke. Her voice was cold and unfriendly, nothing like the warm tone she had used with the other customers just minutes before. She did not stand up from her chair or offer him a handshake like she had done with the man in the expensive suit. Instead, she stayed seated and looked at him like he was bothering her during something very important. "Can I help you with something?" Sarah asked, but the way she said it made it sound like she really did not want to help him at all. Her fingers kept tapping on her desk and her eyes kept looking past James toward the door, as if she was hoping he would just leave on his own. James smiled politely and spoke in his most professional voice. "Good morning. I am interested in looking at some of your cars. I have been researching your inventory online, and I think I might find what I need here." He kept his tone respectful and friendly, the same way he spoke to important visitors at the palace. Sarah's eyebrows went up in a way that showed she was surprised, but not in a good way. She looked at James again from head to toe, taking in his simple clothes and regular appearance. Behind her, James could see two other salespeople who had stopped their conversations to watch what was happening. They whispered something to each other, and one of them actually laughed quietly. "What kind of car were you thinking about?" Sarah asked, but her voice made it clear that she thought James was wasting her time. She did not offer him a chair or a brochure like she had given to other customers. She did not even ask his name or try to shake his hand. James pointed toward a section of the showroom where some slightly less expensive cars were displayed. These were still luxury vehicles that cost more than most people made in 2 years, but they were not the super expensive supercars in the center of the room. I was interested in looking at some of the BMW models or perhaps a Mercedes, something reliable but with good performance. Sarah actually rolled her eyes at this point. She stood up from her chair, but only to point toward a far corner of the showroom where James could see some older cars that looked like they had been used before. These cars were still nice, but they were clearly not the main attraction of the dealership. "You might want to look over there," Sarah said, pointing to the corner with obvious annoyance in her voice. "Those cars might be more in your price range. They are all very good quality and much more affordable than what you were looking at." James felt his face get warm with embarrassment. He had not even told Sarah how much money he had or what his budget was. She was making assumptions about what he could afford based only on how he looked. Around him, other customers in expensive clothes were being treated like kings and queens, while he was being treated like he did not belong there. 2 more salespeople had joined the group behind Sarah, and all of them were now staring at James with expressions that ranged from curious to annoyed. One of them, a tall man with gray hair and an expensive watch, shook his head slowly as if he could not believe James had even walked into their dealership. James tried again, speaking even more politely than before. "I appreciate the suggestion, but I was really hoping to look at some newer models. I have done quite a bit of research, and I believe I know what I am looking for. Would it be possible to speak with someone about the BMW section?" The tall man with the gray hair stepped forward, and James could see a name tag that read Mr. Harrison, Sales Manager. His face showed clear irritation as he looked at James like he was some kind of problem that needed to be solved quickly. "Sir," Mr. Harrison said in a voice that was trying to sound polite, but was clearly annoyed, "I think Sarah has given you some very good advice. Perhaps you should look at what she suggested before we discuss anything else." James realized that this was not going to be the simple car-buying experience he had hoped for. James could feel the tension in the air getting thicker by the minute. Mr. Harrison stood with his arms crossed, looking at James like he was some kind of puzzle that needed to be solved quickly and quietly. Sarah had moved to stand next to her boss, and both of them were blocking James from moving deeper into the showroom where the newer cars were displayed. "Look," James said, trying to keep his voice calm and professional. "I understand you want to help me find the right car for my budget, but I have not told you what my budget is yet. I would really appreciate the chance to look at some of the newer models before making any decisions." Mr. Harrison let out a long sigh that sounded like he was dealing with a difficult child. He looked around the showroom at the other customers who were all being treated with respect and attention. Then he looked back at James with an expression that was getting more annoyed by the second. "Sir, let me be very clear with you," Mr. Harrison said in a voice that was getting louder than it needed to be. "We are a luxury car dealership. Our vehicles start at prices that might surprise you. Before we waste anyone's time, including yours, I need to know that you are a serious buyer." James felt his heart start to beat faster. He had dealt with difficult people before in his job protecting the royal family. But this was different. This was personal. This was about him as a person, not about his work. I am absolutely a serious buyer, James replied. I have been saving for this purchase for months. I know exactly what these cars cost, and I am prepared to make a purchase today. Mr. Harrison's eyebrows went up in a way that showed he did not believe James at all. Really, he said, and the word came out sounding like he was making fun of James. And what kind of work do you do that allows you to afford cars that cost more than most people make in several years? Other customers in the showroom had started to notice the conversation. James could see people looking in their direction and whispering to each other. A woman in a fur coat was staring openly while her husband pointed toward the situation. James felt his face getting red with embarrassment, but he tried to stay calm. I work for the government, James said simply. He did not want to explain his exact job because he was trained to keep his work private. I have been at my job for 15 years, and I have saved carefully for this purchase. Sarah laughed out loud at this point, and the sound was mean and mocking. The government, she repeated, and she said it like it was the funniest thing she had ever heard. What department of the government pays enough for someone to buy luxury cars? Mr. Harrison was nodding along with Sarah like they both thought James was telling lies. Sir, I am going to be very direct with you, the sales manager said, and his voice was now loud enough that everyone in the showroom could hear him clearly. These cars are not for everyone. They are for people who have achieved a certain level of success in life, people who understand quality and can appreciate fine engineering. James could not believe what he was hearing. Mr. Harrison was basically telling him that he was not good enough to buy a car from their dealership. The other salespeople had gathered around to watch the show, and some of them were smiling like they were enjoying James's embarrassment. I think there has been a misunderstanding, James said, trying one more time to be reasonable. I am not asking for anything special. I just want to look at some cars and possibly make a purchase. This is how car dealerships work everywhere else. Mr. Harrison shook his head slowly like James just did not understand how the world worked. This is not just any car dealership, he said with pride in his voice. This is Sterling Motors. We serve a very particular type of clientele, people who belong in places like this. The message was clear. In Mr. Harrison's opinion, James did not belong there. The situation in the showroom was now getting completely out of control. James could feel every pair of eyes in the dealership looking at him. The classical music that had seemed so peaceful when he first walked in now felt like it was mocking him. The beautiful cars around him seemed to be witnesses to his humiliation. Mr. Harrison was no longer trying to hide his annoyance. His face was red, and his voice kept getting louder with each word he spoke. Sir, I am going to ask you one more time to look at the vehicles that Sarah showed you. Those are the cars that would be appropriate for someone in your situation. James took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. His training as a Royal Protection Officer had taught him how to handle difficult situations, but this was testing his patience in ways he had never experienced before. Mr. Harrison, I have been very polite and respectful. All I am asking for is the same treatment that you give to other customers. I want to look at cars and possibly buy one. That is what car dealerships are for. Sarah stepped forward with a look on her face that was pure annoyance. You have been looking at cars, she said, pointing toward the corner where the older vehicles were displayed. We showed you cars that are perfect for your budget. Why are you being so difficult about this? James realized that no matter what he said, these people had already made up their minds about him. They had decided he was not worthy of their time or attention based only on his clothes and appearance. He had been judged and found lacking before he had even spoken a single word. I am not being difficult, James said, and for the first time his voice showed a little bit of frustration. I am trying to be a customer in your store. I have money to spend, and I want to spend it here. I do not understand why that is such a problem. Mr. Harrison looked at James like he was getting tired of the whole conversation. Then he did something that changed everything. He walked over to a phone on the reception desk and picked it up. James watched in shock as the sales manager dialed a number and spoke into the phone. Security, we need someone in the main showroom, please. We have a situation that needs to be handled. James could not believe what he was hearing. Mr. Harrison was calling security on him like he was some kind of criminal. All around the showroom, other customers were staring and whispering. Some of them looked shocked, others looked curious, and a few looked like they thought James must have done something wrong to deserve this treatment. "What situation?" James asked, his voice showing disbelief. "What exactly have I done that requires security?" Mr. Harrison hung up the phone and turned back to James with a satisfied look on his face. "Sir, you have been asked multiple times to look at vehicles that are appropriate for your situation. You have refused to cooperate, and you have been wasting our time. We have other customers to serve, and we cannot continue to deal with this disruption." James felt like he was in some kind of bad dream. "Disruption," he repeated. "I asked to look at cars. In a car dealership. How is that a disruption?" Sarah was nodding her head in agreement with her boss. "You are clearly not a serious buyer," she said. "Serious buyers do not argue when we try to help them find appropriate vehicles." A large man in a security uniform appeared at the entrance to the showroom. He looked around until he spotted Mr. Harrison, who pointed directly at James. The security guard started walking across the marble floor, his heavy boots making loud sounds that echoed through the quiet showroom. James watched the security guard approaching and felt something inside him breaking. This was not just about being treated rudely anymore. This was about his dignity as a human being. These people were treating him like he was some kind of threat, just because he did not look like their usual customers. The security guard reached James and spoke in a professional but firm voice. "Sir, I am going to have to ask you to leave the premises." James looked around the showroom one more time. Every person there was watching him being escorted out like a criminal. He had served his country for 15 years, protecting the most important people in Britain, and now he was being thrown out of a car dealership like he was some kind of troublemaker. James walked out of Sterling Motors with his head held high, even though his heart was pounding with anger and embarrassment. The security guard had been polite but firm, escorting him to the front door while everyone in the showroom watched. The heavy glass door closed behind him with a soft sound that seemed to echo in his ears like a door slamming shut on his dignity. Standing on the sidewalk outside the dealership, James took several deep breaths of the cool London air. Cars drove past him on the busy street, their drivers having no idea what had just happened inside the fancy building behind him. People walked by going about their normal day while James tried to process what he had just experienced. For 15 years, James had been trained to stay calm under pressure. He had stood guard during royal events where thousands of people were watching. He had protected members of the royal family during visits to dangerous places around the world. He had dealt with protesters, difficult crowds, and even real threats to the people he was sworn to protect. But nothing in his training had prepared him for being treated like a criminal just for wanting to buy a car. James pulled out his mobile phone and stared at it for a moment. His first thought was to call someone and complain about what had happened. He wanted to tell someone about the unfair treatment he had received. He wanted to find a way to make Mr. Harrison and Sarah understand how wrong they had been. But James was not the kind of person who lost his temper or made angry phone calls when things went wrong. Instead, he scrolled through his contacts until he found the number for his supervisor at the Royal Protection Unit. Commander Williams had been James's boss for 8 years and had always been fair and understanding. If anyone would know how to handle this situation properly, it would be him. The phone rang twice before Commander Williams answered. "James, good to hear from you. How did the car shopping go today?" James paused for a moment, trying to find the right words to explain what had happened without sounding like he was complaining or making excuses. "Sir, I ran into an unexpected situation at the dealership. I was wondering if I could speak with you about it when you have time." Commander Williams could hear something in James's voice that told him this was not a casual conversation. "What kind of situation, James? Are you all right?" James looked back at the dealership through the glass windows. He could see Mr. Harrison talking to other customers with a big smile on his face, acting like nothing unusual had happened. "I was treated very poorly at Sterling Motors, sir. They made assumptions about me based on my appearance, and eventually had me escorted out by security. I never got the chance to even look at any vehicles properly." There was silence on the phone for a few seconds before Commander Williams spoke again. His voice was serious and concerned. "James, that is completely unacceptable. You are one of our most professional and dedicated officers. The idea that someone would treat you that way is beyond inappropriate." James felt better just hearing his supervisor's supportive words. "Thank you, sir. I was thinking about going back tomorrow with proper identification to show them who I am and what I do. I still need to buy a car for the upcoming assignment." Commander Williams was quiet for a moment, and James could almost hear him thinking. "Actually, James, I have a better idea. His Royal Highness Prince William has several appointments in that area of London tomorrow afternoon. One of them was going to be a private visit, but I think we might be able to make a small change to the schedule." James was confused about what his supervisor was suggesting. "Sir, I do not understand what you mean." Commander Williams's voice had a tone that James had never heard before. It was not angry, but it was very determined. "James, you have served this family and this country with honor for 15 years. You deserve to be treated with respect wherever you go. Tomorrow, you and I are going to pay a visit to Sterling Motors together, and we are going to bring His Royal Highness with us." James felt his heart start to beat faster, but this time it was not from embarrassment or anger. "Sir, are you sure that is appropriate? I do not want to cause any trouble or make this situation bigger than it needs to be." "James," Commander Williams said firmly, "this is not about causing trouble. This is about making sure that people understand that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of how they look or dress. You are doing nothing wrong by trying to buy a car. Tomorrow, we are going to make sure you get the service you deserve." The next morning, James woke up early feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement that he had never experienced before in his 15 years of service. He had spent most of the previous evening thinking about what Commander Williams had told him. The idea that Prince William himself would be involved in resolving his situation seemed almost impossible to believe. James arrived at the Royal Protection Unit headquarters 2 hours before his normal shift time. The building was quieter than usual, with only the early morning staff going about their duties. He made himself a cup of tea and sat in the break room, trying to calm his nerves and prepare mentally for what was going to happen. Commander Williams arrived at his office earlier than usual as well. James could see him through the glass windows, making phone calls and looking at papers on his desk. Every few minutes, the commander would look up and wave at James, giving him a reassuring smile that helped calm some of his anxiety. At 9:30 in the morning, Commander Williams called James into his office. The room was decorated with photographs of royal events and certificates recognizing years of dedicated service. James had been in this office many times before, but today it felt different. Today they were planning something that had never happened before. "James, sit down," Commander Williams said, pointing to a comfortable chair across from his desk. "I spoke with His Royal Highness last night about your situation at Sterling Motors. I want you to know that he was genuinely upset about how you were treated." James felt his face get warm with a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude. The idea that Prince William knew about his humiliation was both embarrassing and somehow comforting at the same time. "Sir, what exactly did His Royal Highness say about the situation?" Commander Williams leaned back in his chair and smiled. He said that anyone who serves the royal family with the dedication and professionalism that you show deserves to be treated with respect everywhere they go. He also said that he has never liked the way some businesses treat people differently based on their appearance or social status. James nodded, remembering all the times he had seen Prince William interact with people from all walks of life. The prince was always kind and respectful to everyone, from world leaders to regular citizens who just wanted to shake his hand. It made sense that he would be upset about discrimination and unfair treatment. His Royal Highness has 3 official appointments in that area of London this afternoon. Commander Williams continued. A visit to a children's charity, a meeting with local business leaders, and a stop at a community center. We have arranged for a fourth stop that is not on the official schedule. James could hardly believe what he was hearing. Sir, are you telling me that Prince William is actually going to visit Sterling Motors? Commander Williams grinned in a way that James had rarely seen before. Not exactly, James. We are all going to visit Sterling Motors together. You, me, His Royal Highness, and the full security detail. We are going to walk in there like we own the place, and you are going to get the respect and service that you should have received yesterday. James felt his heart start to race with anticipation and nervousness. Sir, I am honored that you and His Royal Highness would do this for me, but I am also worried about causing a scene or creating problems for the royal family. Commander Williams stood up and walked around his desk to put a hand on James's shoulder. James, let me tell you something that I learned a long time ago. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is stand up for what is right, especially when someone has been treated unfairly. Yesterday, you were treated badly because of how you looked, not because of who you are or what you have accomplished. James looked out the window at the busy London streets below. Somewhere out there, Mr. Harrison and Sarah were probably getting ready for another day of selling expensive cars to wealthy customers. They had no idea that their world was about to change completely. What time are we going to the dealership? James asked, feeling more confident about the plan. Commander Williams checked his watch and smiled. His Royal Highness will finish his community center visit at 2 o'clock. We will arrive at Sterling Motors at exactly 2:15. James, I want you to wear your full dress uniform today. Let them see exactly who you are and what you represent. At exactly 2:15 in the afternoon, 3 black Range Rovers with tinted windows pulled up outside Sterling Motors. The vehicles moved in perfect formation, just like they did during official royal visits. The first car stopped directly in front of the main entrance, while the other 2 positioned themselves on either side of the building. People walking down the busy London street stopped to stare at the impressive convoy. Inside the dealership, Mr. Harrison was showing a wealthy businessman around a new Ferrari when he noticed the commotion outside. Through the large glass windows, he could see the black vehicles and several people in dark suits talking into small radios. His first thought was that some very important customer was arriving, possibly a celebrity or a foreign diplomat. Sarah was at her desk, helping a woman choose between 2 different luxury sedans, when she also noticed the activity outside. She had worked at Sterling Motors for 3 years and had seen many wealthy customers arrive in expensive cars, but she had never seen anything quite like this. The professional way the security team was moving around suggested that whoever was in those cars was very important indeed. The first Range Rover's door opened, and James Mitchell stepped out onto the sidewalk. But this was not the same James who had been humiliated and escorted out the day before. Today, James was wearing his full Royal Protection Unit dress uniform. His jacket was perfectly pressed, his shoes were polished to a mirror shine, and his medals and insignia caught the afternoon sunlight. He looked every inch the professional Royal Protection Officer that he was. Mr. Harrison stopped talking to his customer and stared through the window. There was something familiar about the man in uniform, but he could not quite place where he had seen him before. The businessman he was helping also turned to look outside, clearly impressed by the official appearance of the convoy. The second Range Rover's door opened, and Commander Williams emerged, also in full dress uniform. He was followed by 2 other senior protection officers, all of them moving with the precise, professional manner that came from years of protecting the most important people in Britain. They formed a protective formation around the first vehicle, their eyes constantly scanning the area for any potential threats. Sarah's customer had completely forgotten about choosing between cars and was now pressed against the window trying to see what was happening outside. Other customers and staff members throughout the showroom had gathered near the windows, all of them curious about the impressive display of security and professionalism happening right outside their door. Then the third Range Rover's door opened, and everything changed. Prince William stepped out of the vehicle, and the entire atmosphere around Sterling Motors shifted instantly. Even through the glass windows of the dealership, his presence was unmistakable. He was dressed in a smart business suit and carried himself with the natural confidence that came from a lifetime of public service. The prince looked around briefly, taking in his surroundings, before beginning to walk toward the dealership entrance. Inside the showroom, complete silence fell over everyone present. Mr. Harrison's mouth dropped open as he realized that Prince William was walking directly toward his dealership. Sarah stood up from her desk so quickly that her chair rolled backward and hit the wall behind her. Every customer in the building was staring in complete amazement. James walked beside Prince William, his role as a protection officer clear to everyone watching. Commander Williams and the other officers maintained their professional formation, creating a secure perimeter around the prince as they approached the entrance. The entire group moved with a level of coordination and professionalism that showed years of experience working together. Mr. Harrison suddenly felt a terrible sinking feeling in his stomach as he began to recognize James. The man in the impressive uniform, walking next to Prince William, looked exactly like the person he had thrown out of his dealership the day before. But that was impossible, wasn't it? The man yesterday had been wearing casual clothes and had seemed so ordinary, so unremarkable. Prince William reached the glass door of Sterling Motors and paused for a moment, allowing James to step forward and open it for him. As the door swung open, James looked directly through the glass at Mr. Harrison and Sarah, and they both realized with growing horror that their worst nightmare was about to come true. The royal party stepped inside the dealership, and the most extraordinary car-buying experience in Sterling Motors history was about to begin. The moment Prince William stepped inside Sterling Motors, the entire dealership fell into complete silence. The soft classical music that had been playing in the background seemed to stop, even though it was still coming from the speakers. Every person in the showroom, from the wealthy customers to the sales staff, stood frozen like statues as they tried to process what they were seeing. Mr. Harrison felt his legs go weak as the full reality of the situation hit him like a punch to the stomach. The man he had thrown out yesterday, the man he had called security on, the man he had treated like a criminal, was now standing next to Prince William in a royal protection officer's uniform. The medals on James's chest caught the light from the showroom's expensive fixtures, and his professional bearing made it clear that he was not just any government worker. Prince William looked around the showroom with interest, taking in the expensive cars and the luxurious atmosphere. His presence filled the space in a way that made everyone aware that something very important was happening. He moved with the calm confidence of someone who was used to being in the public eye, but there was also something in his expression that suggested he was not here for a casual visit. Sarah stood behind her desk with her face completely white with shock and fear. She kept looking back and forth between James and Prince William, trying to understand how the situation had changed so dramatically in just 24 hours. Her hands were shaking as she realized that she had treated a member of the royal protection team like he was some kind of troublemaker. James maintained his professional composure, but inside he was feeling a mixture of satisfaction and nervousness. He had dreamed about this moment all night, imagining what it would be like to see the expressions on Mr. Harrison's and Sarah's faces when they realized their mistake. But now that it was actually happening, he felt more focused on doing his job properly than on getting revenge. Prince William walked further into the showroom, with James staying close beside him as his protection officer. The other royal security team members spread out around the dealership, taking positions that would allow them to watch all the exits and keep the prince safe. Their movements were smooth and professional, showing that they had done this kind of thing thousands of times before. "Good afternoon," Prince William said to the stunned staff, his voice carrying clearly through the quiet showroom. "I understand that one of my protection officers visited your establishment yesterday to look at purchasing a vehicle." Mr. Harrison tried to speak, but only managed to make a small choking sound. He cleared his throat and tried again, his voice coming out much higher than normal. "Your Royal Highness, this is such an honor. We had no idea. If we had known." Prince William held up his hand in a polite gesture that stopped Mr. Harrison from continuing. "That is exactly the point," the prince said, his voice remaining calm but with an edge that everyone in the room could hear. "You should not need to know who someone is or what they do in order to treat them with basic respect and courtesy." The other customers in the showroom were watching the scene unfold like they were witnessing history being made. Some of them had pulled out their mobile phones and were taking pictures, though they were trying to be discreet about it. A woman in an expensive fur coat was whispering excitedly to her husband about how they would have an amazing story to tell their friends. James stepped forward slightly and spoke in his professional voice. "Your Royal Highness, these are the staff members I told you about. Mr. Harrison is the sales manager, and Sarah works at the reception desk." Sarah looked like she was about to faint. She had spent yesterday laughing at James and pointing him toward the used cars in the corner. Now she was face to face with Prince William himself, and the man she had treated so poorly was clearly someone very important and respected. Mr. Harrison finally found his voice and started speaking very quickly, his words tumbling over each other in his panic. "Your Royal Highness, there has been a terrible misunderstanding. We pride ourselves on excellent customer service. If there was any confusion yesterday, I assure you it was completely unintentional." Prince William looked at Mr. Harrison with a kind of steady gaze that made it clear he was not going to accept excuses or explanations that avoided the truth. Prince William looked directly at Mr. Harrison with a kind of steady, serious expression that showed he was not going to accept any weak excuses or half-hearted apologies. The sales manager was sweating now, despite the air conditioning in the luxury showroom. He kept wiping his forehead with a handkerchief while trying to think of something to say that would make this terrible situation better. "Mr. Harrison," Prince William said in a voice that was polite but very firm, "I would like you to explain to me exactly what happened when Officer Mitchell visited your dealership yesterday, and please be completely honest with me." Mr. Harrison looked around the showroom desperately, as if he was hoping someone else would answer the question for him. But every person in the building was staring at him, waiting to hear what he would say. The wealthy customers who had been shopping for cars were now getting a front row seat to one of the most important lessons about respect and dignity that any of them had ever witnessed. "Your Royal Highness," Mr. Harrison began, his voice shaking slightly, "we may have made some assumptions about Officer Mitchell based on his appearance. We thought he was not a serious customer because he was dressed casually." Prince William nodded slowly, but his expression made it clear that he was not satisfied with this explanation. "So you decided that someone wearing casual clothes could not afford to buy a car from your dealership. Is that correct?" Sarah finally found the courage to speak, though her voice was barely above a whisper. "We were just trying to help him find something in his price range. Your Royal Highness, we did not mean any disrespect." James stepped forward and spoke in his calm, professional voice. "Your Royal Highness, they directed me to look at used cars in the corner before I even told them my budget. When I asked to see newer models, they called security and had me escorted out of the building." The silence that followed James's words was so complete that everyone could hear the sound of traffic outside on the busy London street. Prince William looked around the showroom, taking in the expensive cars and the luxurious atmosphere, before turning back to the staff with an expression that was both disappointed and determined. "I want to be very clear about something," Prince William said, his voice carrying to every corner of the showroom. "Officer Mitchell has served my family and this country with honor and dedication for 15 years. He has protected members of the royal family during dangerous situations around the world. He has earned the right to be treated with respect wherever he goes, not because of his job, but because he is a human being with dignity." Mr. Harrison was nodding frantically, trying to show that he understood and agreed with everything Prince William was saying. "Of course, Your Royal Highness, we completely agree. We would be honored to serve Officer Mitchell and help him find the perfect vehicle." Prince William smiled for the first time since entering the dealership, but it was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that showed he was pleased that his point was finally being understood. That is exactly what I wanted to hear, Mr. Harrison. Officer Mitchell came here yesterday as a customer with money to spend. Today, he is here as my protection officer. But in both cases, he deserves your respect and your best service. For the next 20 minutes, James received treatment that was completely different from his experience the day before. Sarah personally showed him 3 different BMW models, explaining all the features and answering every question he had with enthusiasm and respect. Mr. Harrison offered him coffee and made sure he was comfortable while looking at the vehicles. Other staff members who had ignored him yesterday now treated him like he was the most important customer they had ever served. James eventually chose a dark blue BMW that was perfect for his needs. It was reliable, fast when necessary, but not too flashy for his protection work. As they completed the paperwork, Prince William spoke quietly with other customers in the showroom, making sure they understood the importance of treating all people with dignity and respect. Before leaving, Prince William shook hands with James in front of everyone in the dealership. Officer Mitchell, thank you for your continued service and dedication. I am proud to have you on my protection team. As the royal convoy prepared to leave Sterling Motors, Mr. Harrison approached James one final time. Officer Mitchell, I want to personally apologize for yesterday. We were completely wrong, and I promise you that we will never treat any customer that way again. James looked at the sales manager and nodded politely. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I hope that other people who visit your dealership will be treated with the respect that every customer deserves, regardless of how they look or dress. The story of what happened at Sterling Motors spread quickly through social media and local news. It became a powerful reminder that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, no matter what they look like or how much money people think they have. James returned to his duties protecting the royal family, driving his new BMW, and knowing that his experience had taught an important lesson to many people about the true meaning of respect.